BTB listeners, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. Do me a favor, if you get 5 seconds, hop onto Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and give the BTB Project a like and subscribe. Also, share this episode with a family member or friend that you feel could be impacted by this. And as always, I cannot thank you enough for your continued support. And let's continue to pay the mission forward. I wanted to share a story that hits close to home. It's the story of my mom going to rehab 4 times. And it's not just her story. It's a powerful lesson in vulnerability that changed my life and perspective. At 16 years old, I took my mom to her first rehab. And through the ups and downs, her journey taught me that vulnerability is not a weakness. It's a source of strength. It's about facing our challenges, finding support, and becoming advocates for change. So as we get into the episode, we'll explore my mom's struggle, overcoming addiction, and what I learned along the way. It's also a simple but powerful reminder that embracing our vulnerabilities can be the path to true strength and healings in our life. Let's get into it.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you.
Welcome to the BTB Project, designed to empower listeners to identify their why and to live their best lives no matter the circumstances. My name is Coleman Gerhardt. A former athlete and motivational coach, I've had the opportunity to inspire thousands through my story and help accomplish what they are built to be. You'll be encouraged by each and every episode, and let's get into it.
Yeah, when I blow up, I'ma soar high like Peter Pan. In real life, be living out my dreams. If I'm waking up, it's in a foreign land.
4 rehabs. It's amazing to think back at some of the journey that I went through being a child of an alcoholic. And I wanted to really shed some light on a lot of the lessons I've learned through what transpired with my mom and how it helped me become the person that I am today. And I mean, at the age of 16 years old, I found myself thrusted into a reality that no teenager should ever have to endure. And that was confronting my mother's battle with addiction. At this point in my life, it was a very common occurrence for my mom to come home from work drunk, inebriated, under the influence, whatever you want to call it. And it was something that I saw on a continuous basis for most of my life. And when it got to the point where I was faced with just an incredible amount of verbal abuse and broken promises, I really got to the point where I summed up the courage to intervene. I saw somebody struggling. I saw somebody hurting. And even though I was young and I was receiving a lot of difficult things verbalized and physically coming from my mother, I just remember that morning. It was a tough night that night before she had passed out on the floor with food, and we had 2 little dogs at the time that were just around her, and she was just barely breathing, shallow breathing. And I put my ear up to her mouth and realized that she was holding on by a thread. And all I was doing was just shaking my mom, just saying, "Mom, mom, wake up, wake up." And it was in that moment where when I was able to get her to bed and she woke up the next morning that I confronted her and said, "Mom, I need the keys to your car. I need you to get in the car. I'm going to take you to rehab." And little did I know in that moment that that would be the beginning of a journey that was filled with a tremendous amount of highs and a lot of heart wrenching lows. there's no 16-year-old that should ever have to take their mom to rehab. And I just remember vividly the resistance that she had towards me in that moment. I remember the the physical altercation of where she kept refusing, 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 and I literally had to grab her by the shoulders and physically place her into the car. And even driving in the car, I had to make sure that I kept the doors locked so that she wouldn't try to get out. That first rehab, it was a smaller rehabilitation center. And I remember finally getting there and just the continued resistance of not wanting to get out of the car, literally having to peel her out of the seat as she's grabbing on to the door jamb because she didn't want to get help. She didn't want to get told that she had a problem. And it was gut wrenching for me. I mean, it was a situation that going to that first rehab, when she finally got through the doors, I was really going on this plunge into the unknown. My mother was exposing a lot of her scars from the past, admitting her faults and finally seeking help. I remember the withdrawal she had at that first rehab where they spend the first few days literally doing an IV treatment and pumping her stomach and getting all of the alcohol and drugs out of her body. And it led me to this moment where when I became the number one contact for my mom when she started to go to rehab, I had to learn a lot about vulnerability. And as we walk through this story, the reason why I'm sharing it with you as the listener is for you to understand how important vulnerability is and how it has not only transformed me back then when I was helping my mom, but how it's transformed me today into who I am as the coach, as the mentor, as the person that is helping people in their lives. Because I believe our true strength comes from vulnerability, from the most vulnerable, challenging aspects of our life. And being able to keep track of that is absolutely important. That first rehab, my mom was in a 28-day program, and she was part of a group of 18 to 20 people, all from various backgrounds of drugs and alcohol. And she started putting in the work. She was doing multiple counseling sessions. She was doing physical therapy, emotional therapy, psychological therapy, everything that you can think of to help try to create the alignment between the ears physically based off of everything that she went through in the past. And it was in that first rehab to where she had a tremendous amount of success until I remember she gets out, and it was 2 days, not even 48 hours after my mom had left that first rehab. And I came home from the gym, and it was just like clockwork. I opened the door, there she is, passed out on the floor. But little did I know in that moment, I ended up being put into a situation that was far out of my control because what I learned after my mom relapsing was that when she was actually at that first rehab, she would go out with other addicts, buy alcohol, buy cigarettes, get drunk, go back to rehab, and pretend like nothing ever happened. She was so addicted, so habitually locked into what she was doing on a day in and day out basis that she was in a $22,000 28-day program and couldn't stay sober. for even a couple days. So as we found that out with the first rehab, I had a very candid, challenging conversation with my mom, very similar to the one that got her to her first rehab. And that was, not only are you going to go back to rehab, but you're actually going to put in the work this time. And that's why one of these big lessons when I'm talking through this, and the first lesson that is important here is I had to reflect on my vulnerabilities. And I'm going to ask you to reflect on your vulnerabilities. I mean, take a moment to reflect on your own vulnerabilities. What challenges do you face? There are moments to where when you're vulnerable and you're authentic and you have the courage to think about these things, to voice them, first of all, understand that your vulnerabilities don't define you. They are the raw materials of which strength can be forged. And that conversation that I had with my mom before her second rehab was just that. Here I am now, 16 and a half, and I'm telling my mom, a 50-year-old woman, that this has to be something to where you put in the work. This has to be something to where whatever demons, whatever insecurities, whatever has been placed in your hand in the past, you have to go out and you have to face it. And all of these people that are put in place at these rehabilitation centers are there to help you. They're there to allow you to have a safe place to overcome what you're feeling, what you're facing. And it's incredibly important that you actually decide, you make the effort that no matter what the circumstances are, I'm going to go after this. And I just remember that second rehab. She goes back to the same facility, Parker Valley Hope. And my mom delved deeper into the roots of her addiction. She shared the painful truths that haunted her. She shared about the times that her mother left her with situations that were not healthy for any young daughter to be a part of. She shared about her mom and dad both being drug addicts. She shared about her two sisters both being addicted to heroin and meth. And she got really honest with herself about how this ended up being a huge focal point in her life. And it was in that second rehab to where she actually did the work. She didn't go out and go drink with her friends. She stayed on a strict regimen. She was vulnerable and honest in those moments. And it got to a point to where as she was deep in her vulnerability, she completed her 28-day program. And I remember part of that celebration is called a cup hanging ceremony. And basically all of the people that are in rehab that have graduated from the program will go on stage. They will have their family come up and they will basically confess in front of the people of the rehabilitation center and family that they choose sobriety. They choose to no longer be handled by this addiction and pain. And I just remember my mom being on that stage and with all the people in the crowd, she turned around and looked at my dad, brother, and myself and said, "Guys, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for what I've done for you. I'm so sorry for what this addiction has done for me. It has caused turmoil, chaos, sadness, separation, conflict." And she, again, was vulnerable. And in that moment on that stage, I really, in the bottom of my heart, felt that my mom, like I had my mom back, that she was going to do this, that she really, through the times that I was talking through rehab, the stuff that she was working on, that she was actually going to live this out outside of her rehabilitation system. And that's really the second lesson that I want you guys to take away was after that second rehab, my mom did start to build a support system. And that's a big key. I mean, there's AA meetings, there's organizations like Al Anon that help family members of alcoholics navigate sobriety. And just as much as the person that is going to rehab, how drugs and alcohol have affected them, it just as easily affects each and every one of the family members. But being able to surround yourself with a network of individuals who understand the transformative power of vulnerability is huge. We all have testimonies, and for my mom to finally put herself around a good support system was incredibly important. Talking about sharing your struggles allows others to share theirs. And within these connections, there's a true understanding of where healing begins. And as empathy and understanding weave into this incredible blanket of support, I saw my mom putting in the work until a few days later. And unfortunately, this time around, I was supposed to go on a dinner date with my mom. She had always liked going out and dressing up, going to a nice restaurant and hanging out together. And I remember coming back over to the house, and she had called me that afternoon, excited to get together. And I remember showing up to the house, and this time when I opened the door, my mom wasn't passed out on the floor. My mom was actually standing in her pretty outfit, ready to go out. But when I walked in and I got close to her, I could see it in her eyes. I could see the letdown that she had in her facial expression. I could see the guttedness that she felt. And right then and there, she told me that she had relapsed. So now we've been through 2 rehabs. She had relapsed, and she literally got on her hands and knees and said, "I need help." And at that point, we had to make a tough decision because she didn't want to go back to the rehabs that she's been to before. She wanted a more robust program. Wanted something that would be a little bit more extensive. And that's where we found a rehabilitation center that was just outside of Baltimore, Maryland, called Father Martin Ashley. And it's a very prestigious rehabilitation center. Really big actors, actresses, musicians, big name celebrities have been to this center. And my mom wanted to go there. And that's the big third lesson that I want you to take away is we had to seek professional guidance. She had some stepping stones with her previous rehabs, but we really needed support here. And, you know, my mom sought out that expertise for these rehab facilities. And I consider that professional guidance when facing challenges. We need to seek that professional guidance when we're seeking our own challenges. There are therapists, there are counselors, there are support groups that offer valuable insights and tools tailored to each and every one of your unique journeys. And asking for help, I repeat, asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's an assertion to the commitment that you have for your growth and your resilience. And I remember my mom getting on a plane to go to that rehab. And I took her to the airport. I walked her all the way to her gate, and she goes on that airplane. And this particular rehab was known not only for the celebrities that it helped, but for the cost of the program. And it was to the extent of $40,000 for a 30-day intervention. But we went for it. And I remember yet again, my mom arriving and putting me as the primary contact for the rehab and having to walk through as the communicator of our family to my mom again at this point, just over 17 years old. The stories that she would share, the heartache, the pain, it was incredibly challenging to be in that situation. But that taps into another lesson learned in this moment is my mom goes to seek professional guidance at Father Martin Ashley. And while she's there, another important lesson for you guys is to learn from others. She was around yet again other addicts, other people that verbatim could relate to what she had been through, that had the same difficult circumstances from their family life, that had the same bloodline of addiction, of chaos, of dysfunction. And these people are walking right beside my mom in this moment. And when you're embracing the stories of resilience and triumph that are surrounding you, all these people were going through the same thing and they were finding ways to be sober as well. And they're all helping one another. I remember the books that my mom would come back with or tell me about that she's reading, the notes that these people would write to one another, the notes of encouragement, the notes of hope, the notes of providing some sort of beacon of light in a moment where it was truly just incredibly challenging. But that's a testament of the strength of the human spirit. And as we're seeking inspiration from those who have faced similar challenges and have emerged victorious from those challenges, those are the narratives that can serve as an unbelievable spotlight in your life and helping you illuminate your path forward. So as my mom is in that third rehab and she is getting that professional guidance, she's getting the support system. My mom came back absolutely on fire for her sobriety. She had put in even more of the hard work. She had been determined. She had been destined to overcome this addiction, to win this battle, to win this fight. And I remember those times where I wanted to go to dinner and we would hang out. Now all of a sudden she leaves that third rehab and we're able to do those types of things. And then it was a trip. She was back working and she went on a work trip. And I remember she came home from that work trip. She opened the door and it was right then and there that once again, for a third time, my mom had been consuming the wine shooters on the airplane again. She had relapsed. And I was the one trying to pick up the pieces, trying to understand. I was devastated. And it was in that moment I knew that not only my mom had an illness, but that illness led to incredible turmoil in my family. Knowing that we had to brace ourselves for what to do next, but also financially knowing that a lot of these rehabs, she was helped by her employer with some of the expense of the treatment. But we knew that she had to go to a rehab again. And this time she wasn't going to be able to pay for it. Her work wasn't going to cover her. And we had to make really tough decisions to find money from previously selling our house, having to tap into every possible credit card or line of credit that you could think of to get the money put together. But somehow, some way, she was able yet again to get on a plane to go to Baltimore, Maryland, to go to her fourth rehab. And that's the next lesson I want you guys to think about. So she's on her way to her fourth rehab. And I think it's so important to understand that you got to be an advocate for change. It is one thing to say to yourself that, oh, I'm going to make a change, but it's another thing to be an advocate for change. What I've learned with my mom is addiction thrives in silence. She suffered so much on her own in those moments because she didn't want to be vulnerable. She didn't want to put it out there. So we have to break this stigma surrounding difficult circumstances and challenges by becoming an advocate for change. Encourage each other to have open conversations. That includes everything between mental health, addiction, and vulnerability. Support initiatives that provide resources for what you need, and be the voice for those who may be suffering in silence. Everybody has a story, everybody has a testimony. Why can't we help each other, especially those that are suffering in silence? But through that collective action, we can foster a world of vulnerability that is not seen as a weakness, but as a courageous step forward in healing. And it was that fourth rehab to where I remember getting a call from one of her addiction counselors. And she shared just some unbelievable stories to me of what's happened in my mom's life, things that my mom didn't totally uncover throughout the conversations that I had with her. And it led me to just feeling like my heart was broken for her. It led me to feeling like, how in the world did my mom ever survive some of these situations that she was in? My empathy was very high. At this point, still being a young man in my life, my empathy was very high through what she was going through. And in that final rehab stint, that's where I felt like there was the turning point. Again, the letters that she wrote me, the calls that we shared, I felt like it was a genuine commitment to change. And the day she returned home, she was sober. She was radiant. I just remember her hair, her skin, her eyes, the smile on her face. All of it was a sign of triumph. I finally had my mom back. I finally had a mom in my life. But yet, life has its unpredictable moments. And unpredictably, it struck yet again just a couple days after she got back from that last rehab. And my mom had to go in to have a session with her employer. And during that moment, after all of the rehabs that her employer helped her through, they decided to let her go. That despite all of the challenges, it was too much for the employer. And I remember in that deep, vulnerable moment for my mom, she fell into a medical emergency. And unfortunately, it ended up stopping her heart. And she was a little over 40 minutes without oxygen to the brain. And fortunately, she was at a location to where there were two trained CPR certified pilots that could come in and help her. And somehow, some way, they were able to resuscitate her. And right before they were ready to pronounce her dead, she took a breath. And through that breath, she was able to still be alive. But because of the lack of oxygen to the brain, she was deemed clinically brain dead. And throughout this entire process of my mom going to 4 rehabs and all of the lessons learned about vulnerability, I was left with the difficult decision to pull life support from my mom. She always told me while I was communicating with her in rehab that if she ever was deemed to be kept alive by any medical device, that she'd much rather go. She'd much rather go home and know that her life was well lived. In that decision of vulnerability, I learned so much about myself. Being able to say goodbye to my mom and having those opportunities to reflect back on the courageous steps she made to enter rehab and all of the vulnerable steps along the way that have allowed me to learn a lot from some of these situations that I've seen in life. I mean, I witnessed vulnerability that was both powerful and authentic. It stripped off the mask that we often wear in our daily lives. She confronted her struggles head on. And it was in those moments I learned a lesson that would become my guiding light. Vulnerability is not a weakness. This is a badge of courage and strength that is so important in our lives. And as I embrace this newfound understanding, I just realized that vulnerability was a key to my own growth. Nobody at the age of 16, again, should be taking their mom to rehab, but it became the cornerstone of my interactions, transforming me into a better person, a better coach, and a better mentor. Opening up and showing my true self allowed me to connect with others on a level that transcends anything that I could have ever possibly imagined. And it also allowed me to become a better listener. It wasn't just about hearing words, it was about understanding the unspoken stories beneath the surface. This skill of listening became the heartbeat of my coaching, of my mentoring philosophy, a philosophy that's been grounded in empathy, compassion, and really trying to relate to each and every person that I help. But in helping others overcome their challenges, I drew upon the lessons I learned from my mom's journey. Her struggles became a well of wisdom, not just in conquering addiction, but in rising above adversity in all forms. Through her vulnerability, I discovered a reservoir of strength, the strength to face my own demons, the strength to extend a helping hand to others in their unique journeys. And having all of that be a testament for you to show you the power of transformative, amazing situations in our lives because of what she did being vulnerable. It's a power that goes beyond addiction, beyond setbacks, beyond the struggles we all face. Each and every one of us need to embrace vulnerability as it's a force for connection, empathy, and authentic living. As we do that, we not only uplift ourselves, but become beacons of support for those navigating the intricate challenges that life throws at us. So let's be brave. Let's be brave in our vulnerability, for it's embracing that in our true selves that we find the strength to inspire and uplift others. Listen, if this episode inspired you, do me a favor, like and subscribe to the BTB Project. It takes 5 to 10 seconds to go on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and give the podcast a like and share it with a friend or family member or colleague who you know needs to hear the message. I'm on mission with prolific guests, tremendous content to continue to pay the mission forward. As always, I'm proud of each and every one of you. And I appreciate you checking out today's episode. And until next time, take care.